everybody here with us today. So thanks so much for joining. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will trickle in as we go. Yeah, we'll just get started. So welcome to the Pollinate Potluck. My name is Ariel Molino, and I'm the Chief Convener with Pollinate Impact. Some of you might be wondering why the heck we're having a potluck as we launch this network. Really wanted to set the tone of collaboration, of openness, of sharing, and nothing quite captures that better than a potluck, where people bring food and share food, and oftentimes the conversations are better than the food itself at these at potlucks, if you've ever been to one. So I hope you've brought with you ideas to contribute, an openness to taste ideas that others have to offer, and an appetite to learn. This series over the next 2 weeks is the launch of Pollinate Impact, which is a member-led network of impact incubators and accelerators in the Global South. So we empower and resource impact incubators across the Global South to collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing people and the planet. This network has been conceptualized and developed over the last 12 months or more, with no less than 50 stakeholder interviews, 5 focus group sessions, and a design team who put together an incredible framing for this network. So we've listened and engaged with the ecosystem for the last year, and it's finally time for the rubber to meet the road. So we are super excited. I would really like to give a shout out and thank the design team for their relentless support throughout this process. So Arun Venkatesan, Paul Basil, Stephanie Arrowsmith, Paul Belknap, Wilfred Jaggi, Shami Rao, Tassina Tar, Russ Gaskin, and Dominic Stucker. You guys have been absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing your insights and expertise and support to get Pollinate Impact off the ground. Our laser focus on supporting incubators and accelerators in the Global South really stems from the fact that these organizations are the linchpin for the entrepreneurial ecosystem. They advise and build businesses, they offer pipeline to investors, they implement entrepreneur-focused programs for donors. It's really ironic that these incubators and accelerators, who are entrepreneurs themselves, lack the access to support, advice, and networks that they often offer to their own entrepreneurs. Without a thriving industry of impact incubators and accelerators, sustainable development across the Global South will stagnate. Yet, despite the importance of these organizations and the critical role that they play, they themselves struggle with access to funding, with sustainability strategies, with talent, and with gaining access to shared tools and resources. So Pollinate Impact is here to change all of that. We will offer avenues for staff at all levels to collaborate and co-create with other incubators and accelerators across the Global South. We'll help to share resources and encourage the co-creation of new tools. We will go where our members lead and support them to co-curate solutions to their biggest challenges. And this is why we are having a potluck as our launch. We want to offer safe spaces for you to engage, to share, and to help us understand what's most important to you. So don't hold back. So over the next 10 days, there are workshops, there are networking sessions, and open space for dialogue. So please use them to the fullest and don't stop engaging when the potluck is over. We're just getting started. And if you enjoy what you taste over the next few days, we've got plenty more to come. So at Pollinate Impact, when we start any meeting, we like to do a check-in question to see where everyone's at and to just kind of level set and set that tone for our community. So since we're a pretty big group and I can see more people are joining as we go, we'll use Mentimeter, and my colleague Shami will pull this up on her screen. But the question we want everyone to check-in question to answer today is, what flavor are you bringing to today's potluck? So if Shami can pull that up on the screen, and I think we'll have a link in the chat momentarily. Just drop that in real quick.
Sorry, all the practice doesn't work when it's time.
Okay. Right. Well, there, if you just click on that link, you should be able to, thanks, Tessin, yeah. So if you can just click on that link and answer the question. And then as soon as Shami can get her screen share up and running, we'll share everybody's flavors and see what we are kind of cooking with today, or what flavors we're gonna taste. So let me know if you're able to access the Mentimeter. You can just give a thumbs up. And Shami, if you're not able to share your screen, maybe you can just share what you're seeing on the response side. Great, I see a thumbs up from Priya, thanks. So Shami, do you see any responses yet?
Okay, I'm going to unmute myself because otherwise this is not going to work. So I'm going to share my screen now and share. Oops. Is that something you can see? Just
No.
no.
It's okay, Shami, just share what you're seeing on your side. Technology is not working.
It's not working?
No, it says you're sharing screen, but I can't see it.
Oh. What about now?
No. Sorry, Shami.
Sorry. It says sharing, but it's not sharing.
That's inevitably how it's gonna go, right? That's okay.
All right. I honestly don't know what to.
Oh, and Oliver's having a challenge with the link. Okay. Well, does anybody else wants to unmute and share any flavors that they're bringing? Or Shami, if you're able to just read off some.
Yeah, let me just read out. So we have spicy, hot and sweet, grapes, curiosity, tea, fruit salad, umami, sweet again. What's mandazi? I haven't heard of that before.
Mandazi is like a fried dough sort of donut that we have in Kenya.
Awesome. So. All right, so let me stop sharing so that we can at least move on to the next next check-in question.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think we just wanted to get a sense as to where everyone's coming from. The geographic focus for Pollinate Impact as a network is Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. But we'd like to know where you all are from. I can see Oliver already put in the chat that he's from Kigali, so welcome, Oliver. But if you can just let us know on the Mentimeter if we can get it to work, we'll kind of share that. Or Shami can just let us know where
Philippines. Yeah, Philippines, India so far.
So let us know where you're from. And then the next question is what kind of organization represents where you're coming in from. Yeah, Shami, it's still not working. I'm sorry.
UK, Kenya, Ghana. We were just there.
Yeah.
Philippines, Indonesia, New York,
Great.
Canada. Great. Awesome.
Awesome. So Shami, if you want to move to the next question, we're just trying to get a sense as to who's in the room. We're guessing it's a lot of incubators and accelerators. But you can go to the next slide in Mentimeter and select that just because it'll be helpful for us to know who we have in the room. I think that'll be really helpful also for our panelists to share a little bit more about who's coming and who's here. And yeah, Shami, you might have to share that out again verbally. And meanwhile, I will try to also log into Mentimeter and see if I can get it to work from my side.
It's a Zoom thing.
Oh,
We have 4 incubators and accelerators. We have 3 member network organizations / convening organizations. We have 1 consultant, 1 community hub.
great. Great. A good mix. Awesome. Awesome. So thanks. So excellent. Really excited to have you all here today and joining us. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce our lovely moderator, Maeva, who's from the Knowledge Manager for the Global Steering Group for Impact Investing. The GSG globally has been instrumental in setting up communities across the world, really, to support impact investing strategies. So there's really no better voice to help drive this conversation around, the power and influence that networks have when individuals come together. So welcome, Maeva. I'll hand it over to you and then to our speakers. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for the introduction. So yes, my name is Maeva. I'm knowledge manager for the GSG. That's the short name of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, because that's quite a mouthful. And our mission is to scale up the global impact investing market. And we do that through connecting people. And I sometimes describe ourselves as a network of network. There are 3 things that we do to try and accomplish our goal. One is that we set up what we call advisory boards, which are made up of investors, policymakers, and social enterprises, and basically all the different pillars of the ecosystem. We get them together so they can develop and implement a roadmap to scale up impact investing in their country or region. We also support these networks, these advisory boards, to grow and to become more impactful. And finally, we help them learn from each other and collaborate. And we are currently working with advisory boards in 38 countries and helping set up new networks in another 30 countries. And before I introduce our speakers today, I'd like to highlight a few key features of networks that, from my perspective at GSG, are important and things we're likely to touch upon during our discussion. The first one is that networks are really key in creating spaces and opportunities. At the GSG, we run a yearly survey and we ask our member networks, what do they value the most? And the answer that we consistently get is that they really value the connection that they can make through the GSG and the lessons they can learn from their peers in other countries. And that's quite in line with our mission, which is to generate system exchange, because we believe that systems change happens really when people share ideas. And so that's why we have this approach that's really network based. Linked to that is also the fact that the bottom up approach is really important. We believe that to find solution to systemic problems, it's important to hear the voices and perspective from all the stakeholders. And so to develop solutions that are based in contextual realities, we need all that input to then be able to develop global solutions that work also at the local level. But whereas it's really important for us to have all, to give a voice to members and so on, as a network, it's also important to be able to find a common denominator and to synthesize all the needs of different members, to not be, go in all directions, but really to find a way to get all that input and create a single voice for the network. And finally, another point that's really key is that members really need to contribute content, time, reflections, and commitments. They're really fundamental to a network. Otherwise, it's an institution. So, for example, at GSG, we really do our best to provide members with opportunities to meet their needs and to facilitate participation, but success really depends on members' contribution. So when we set up networks, we really try to identify who are the key people. They need to be influential, they need to have things to contribute, but they also need to really truly be available and willing to really step up. So not necessarily always the most senior person, So yeah, these are the three thoughts I had in mind. But without further ado, I will introduce our speakers today. So with us we have Robert Karanja. Robert is a medical scientist and development entrepreneur. He's got over 20 years of experience in STEM and the development sector, holds a PhD in parasitology and entomology from the Jomo Kenyatta University. And he started his career as a scientist with the Kenya Medical Research Institute, where he was actively involved in the establishment of the Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer Office. He's also contributed to entrepreneurial ventures, such as developing diagnostics, nutraceuticals, and phytomedicines products. And building on that, he's launched the Bio-Entrepreneur Bootcamp at Strathmore University, which focused on research commercialization in health and agricultural sector. And this has paved the way for him becoming the co-founder of Wilgo Africa, which is an incubator focusing on health in Africa. And he remains passionate about transforming the continent through innovation and building local value chains, as he serves on the board of several firms and organizations in Kenya and the wider region. We're also joined by Priya Chadi. Priya is an entrepreneur, investor, gender advocate, and she's working across South and Southeast Asia, and she's the co-founder and CEO of Wilgrow Philippines, which is an early stage gender smart incubator that funds, mentors, nurtures social entrepreneurs. She's a radical collaborator and ecosystem builder. She also co-founded Nushu Network, an award-winning platform for women entrepreneurs in Asia to connect with the community, and coaching and curriculum. She also co-founded and runs the Impact Pioneers Network, which is the first impact angel investment network in the Philippines. She's the co-chair of the ND East and Southeast Asia Steering Committee, the host of the podcast Talk Impact, which is a show for and about leaders at the front lines of social change in Asia. And she was recognized in 2020 as a youth gender champion by the UN WEP Award for Asia Pacific. And finally, we're also really glad to have with us today Nanko Madu. Nanko is a seasoned entrepreneur and innovation system builder with 13 years of experience in managing programs on economic development, innovation, and entrepreneurship in Africa. She's the director of programs at AfriLabs, where she leads the design and implementation of the organization's program targeted at the development of capacity building and improvement strategies targeted at startups, innovators, and SMEs, as well as hubs, women, youth, talents within the Pan-African innovation ecosystem. So we're really, really glad to have you all with us today. And maybe my first question will be to Robert. So Robert, you're the chairman of ASIC as well, something I didn't mention in your introduction. You've been a member of AfriLabs and you're an active member of ANDI. Plus, you've also lent your expertise to this new network, Pollinate Impact. So why on earth are you involved in so many different networks? What do you gain from this?
Oh my, thank you so much for putting me on the spot right there. So let me first give a quick disclaimer. I did step down from the chairmanship role at ASEC. ASEC is the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. This is the umbrella body that brings together all the ESOs in the country. And we did so because we realized we needed to have a voice in terms of engaging policymakers. And to be honest, that's the reason, that's the answer even for why I'm in many networks. Well, one of the things about operating in Kenya, in Africa, is there's so much work to be done. When we're talking about innovation, startups, there's a big need for systems thinking. And when you look at systems thinking, the first thing you realize is there's no one organization that can do everything. You need to be able to identify the other leading actors in the ecosystem and understand what are they doing to shape the ecosystem. And for me, what really motivates me is simply the fact that I think we're at a very formative stage in terms of the ecosystem in this part of the world. And if we, if we don't participate in shaping it, then you're forced to deal with an ecosystem that has been shaped in a way that's not optimal for my organization. And so, rather than to watch things happening and complain, I'd rather be a part of, shaping the future and creating the ecosystem that I think would help organizations like Build Grow Africa to thrive and ultimately to have the desired impact in terms of social enterprises that flourish, that scale, that create jobs, that create value chains, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's really a matter of, I can sit back and allow, nature to run its course, and I can almost always guarantee we will not end up where we want to be. Or I can, say, hey, it costs a lot, but you know what? Then, to me, there's this in my head. I also always see the impact of my involvement in the various networks ultimately snowballing into a much more enabling environment.
Thanks, Robert. Moving on to Priya, when you moved to Manila, you pretty much were starting from scratch to build out a community, both personally and professionally. So how would you say that networks, either informally or formally, have helped you to become the incredibly well-connected person that you are today?
Thanks, Miva. I'm still sort of like laughing at what Robert said on allowing, the natural course of ecosystem development and, intervening. But yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be here. And, it's 10:30 p.m. in Manila. And the reason that I'm here is very much because I believe in, the power of networks. And yeah, so, just sort of to give context, I moved to the Philippines about 7 years ago. And I actually spent a whole year because I didn't know a single person here except for my, partner, my husband back then, who was a workaholic and didn't know many other people because he never left the office. So it was very much, a year spent in building my own networks. And, in search of networks that I could plug into. But when I moved here, Southeast Asia, the ecosystem for entrepreneurship is quite nascent. It's growing very fast, probably faster in some other countries. And so it was really about kind of figuring out, is there a place even to do this type of work? And so my first year in the Philippines was really, I wish there were more formal networks to plug into. It would have been easier, but they didn't sort of exist. Or it wasn't as visible. So for me, I spent a lot of time actually one-on-one meeting people, right? I met more than 200 sort of stakeholders, I think, in my first year before at the end of the year, figuring out that we should really set up here and, have a role to play in this ecosystem. But I think there are two sort of strategies, I think, that kind of worked for me, or, I put a lot of effort into. The first was to try to tap into existing networks that we were already connected to as Will Grow globally. One, of course, was Andy in the region, which is also quite young in the region comparatively. So it was, but I think definitely, I think the Andy team was very generous in sort of at least making introductions. I spent a lot of time traveling around the region to plug into networks because I couldn't find them locally. And so it was, organizations like Andy and AVPN, which was also kind of, all sort of young in their own stages of being networks, of bringing philanthropic organizations or, ecosystem players together. But I think at least going to their gatherings kind of helped meet a spectrum of sort of organizations that were working in the region. And so that was one way of plugging in and hearing from somebody, oh, maybe you should also meet this organization or they might be relevant for you. And the second strategy for me was to try to create my own, because when I moved here, I found that there was no place for people in the social impact community to go. So 7 years ago, I actually started a very informal event of which I never thought of as a network. But I think this question, when I was discussing with Ariel earlier, was also about like what are informal networks, right? And I remember starting just an event 7 years ago. We just would meet up in bars. We would just announce like the location on Facebook and say, anybody in the social impact space, like you who wants to meet up, please come to this space. And today it's a monthly event with more than 100 people coming every month. That is 7 years later, but it's an informal network, and that's really grown. And similarly, to the other platforms that I've launched in recent years. But I think going back to sort of maybe what you were sort of identifying as sort of key components, right? I think for me, both of these strategies only worked because you have to sort of put in as much as you're looking to get out, right? So I think I think try to plug into these networks only sort of as a one-way street of oh, I want to connect with somebody, but always trying to see what is the scope for collaboration. Is there something that I can pay forward for every connection that I made? And I think the value of the network is that I wish 7 years ago I had something formally that I could plug into, where I could just go and say, okay, like these are all the players in the ecosystem. And it was very much a journey of, okay, this is the type of organization doing this type of work, and actually spending the time to sort of meet. And today, a big role that I'm playing in the ecosystem is really just connecting people. And I think there's so much power in that, because there's also space of like, identifying commonalities, and, you save a lot of time from making mistakes, save a lot of time in like identifying the right people that you could partner with. And for me personally, I've been a huge beneficiary of being able to plug into networks. So very fortunate to collaborate with others who helped me create some of these networks. And, we are continuing to build those on the ground here in the region. And, as Robert was saying, that sometimes these things kind of keep evolving. And I think that's also what happens with networks, right? Like when we started our event, for example, or even if I look at sort of Andy, which I'm very actively involved in the region, the kind of people have, it keeps growing, and it's that snowballing kind of effect of like bringing more people together. And, that really is really powerful. And I think, especially, I think for those of us in this sector, where we are driven primarily by a mission, where we are primarily driven sort of by impact, it's amazing to be able to plug into a group of people who, have the same values and are really all working towards the same thing, but maybe in different ways. And, that's what's really worked for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I resonate with that a lot. Actually, I thought it was interesting the fact that you mentioned first, starting with the existing networks, because in our work, what we do, we also set up new networks, but it seems quite obvious that you should first start with what is existing, because it saves times, and you don't also want to set up a new network that does not have an added value. So I think starting with what is there is really key. But yeah, very interesting insights. So maybe going back to Robert, and also mentioning something that you've already touched upon a little bit, Priya. So when participating in any network, the saying usually goes, you get out what you put in. So how do you manage the time that you invest in a network, and how do you consider like the return on investment for not only the membership fees that you might have to pay, but also the time and efforts that you put into actively participating in a network?
That's a good question, and a tough one. The way I look at it, the first thing I came to appreciate is that as an organization, you cannot really influence policy. And for me, policy is a big deal. The legal policy framework that we operate in literally creates a ceiling. And the first thing that the policymakers would say is, you need to organize yourselves and come and speak with one voice. So where is this one voice? And the work that we do, for example, at Build Grow Africa is really interesting, because we focus in health, life science. So government is this massive, massive animal that in most cases the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing, let alone the feet. That's a whole other conversation. So being able to understand what's happening and who do you need to have various kind of conversations with, and how do you access to get a seat at the table is super critical. And that's kind of how I really measure success. So for example, when it comes to Ministry of Health, I have a completely different network for Ministry of Health. For Ministry of Industrialization, Trade, Investment, what have you, the economic thinking kind of arm of government, a completely different network. When you're talking about operating outside of Kenya, then the networks in Kenya are no good. So I need now a Pan-African platform where AfriLabs comes in. So and then you find even within the Pan-African platform, if I still want to speak to my core area of health, life science, I need to find a particular platform that speaks to maybe the AU NEPAD on those particular issues. So I'm always trying to find how do I get the voice of to actually articulate the issues that are really pertinent to Vilgro across through the right channel, and that's really kind of how I do it. Then the second thing is uh, I am not blessed, with some of the characteristics that Priya has, and I'm sure Nanko. And if anybody has met Wilfred, these guys are just born. They have this vibe and they're able to go out there and talk. I struggle. I'm actually a bit of, not a bit, I'm literally an introvert. So how do I go out there and make sure that I get to do what, like my voice gets heard? I come up with all sorts of tricks. The first one is I learned whenever you're in a big group, find a smaller group, because otherwise, I don't have this ability to work the room and charm everybody. And, most people will not know me, So the only way I am able to actually be effective is to I typically try and find a leadership role that will not tax me to death, but that in which case where I'm actually just been able to play to my core strengths. I really love systems thinking. I understand innovation systems extremely well, because I had the benefit of getting a lot of training in that space. And so when I add that and then my strong technical expertise, typically when I open my mouth, most people will value what I have to say. So I just make sure that I have, within the bigger, whether it is ASEC or Andy, or I need to find a seat where I can be able to whisper as introverts tend to do, and but it will be effective. So that is one of the coping mechanisms that I have. And the other one, of course, as you've noticed, is the hats that I love to wear, because then most people don't, if I show up for a conference, I can assure you, I'm the kind of person that walks in and will probably have 5 to 10 quality conversations, and that will give me a lot of stuff out of that. My co-founders, my colleagues typically will tell me how they met 50 guys, and I'm like, and they remember their names, and they have all these conversations that I don't know how people do that. So so I come in with a very specific play that works to me, which is being a smaller group where I can be able to contribute very effectively, and then I can be able to actually see the conversation that I'm having, in a sense, really being part of shaping the bigger discourse. So it means I do put in a lot. Fortunately, I think my role at Vilgro has also kind of evolved a little bit towards being, taking the mantle of ecosystem shaping and building. And that allows me to be able to put a lot more bandwidth than I could previously when I had the CEO role, because then I needed to really focus internally. My current space, or my current role, is really being able to speak to the shaping that bigger discourse. I still have, of course, some key responsibilities within the organization, but I kind of am able to have a little bit more bandwidth than my colleagues probably do within Vilgro Africa. So it's been a bit of trying to shape this and that. And it's interesting. So for example, like today, one of the networks I'm in for the health space, they are attending the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and they're going to be speaking specifically on health innovation. And so we had a quick conversation. How do I articulate the way you articulate issues? What are the points? And I'm able to share that. And without having to board a plane, go to New York and all of that, making sure that the right information is presented at the right forum, simply through the power of networks. And that to me is really super powerful. And with time, you start seeing the impact of it. One of the biggest things I used to fear is in global health, we are supporting local innovation, but it's against an onslaught of innovations coming from the north. And COVID was a great example. A lot of local innovation happening, but then ultimately you start seeing they're overshadowed by innovations that come in with all this big funding, WHO, global fund, you name them, all the big players, and they basically skew the market. And the next thing you know, anything that is homegrown is literally forgotten, just because this other one came in with so much money behind it. So how can we change that? And now I'm beginning to see, even for those players in the north, they are now cognizant. Hey, as we deploy all of these funding, health technologies, what have you, where is the space for local manufacturing? Where is the space for how do we capture that in our procurement cycles? How do we involve the local innovation space in the supply chain for the global, and that's been a conversation of 5 years plus, saying somebody needs, the system needs to change. It doesn't make sense for it to operate the way it's operating. But fortunately now we can begin to see the tide is actually turning. And that really just requires networks and having people who can amplify your voice so that even introverts can be heard. So that's kind of that's kind of the strategy for me. I hope that kind of answers the question.
That's a really good practical advice for all of us introverts, but also in general to really identify what are your objectives, where can you influence, and be strategic and intentional about your participation. Thank you so much, Robert. I want to move on to Nako finally. Maybe to talk a little bit about finding connection points and common grounds between individuals and organizations, because this is not easy at all. Having different people with different demands who sometimes don't speak the same language, both literally and figuratively. That's something that we run into a lot at the GHD, for example. So how can make network building really, it can make network building really tough. So in your experience, how have you navigated that, and how do you find the lowest common denominators that can bring people together?
Thank you, Weva. Hi, Robert. So good to see you here. Yeah. I think it's. I will start by just even for the sake of those that don't know what AfriLabs does, because my answer will be hinged on my experience at AfriLabs. I joined the organization about 3 years ago. Before then, I was in management consulting and didn't know anything about community, work or community living and the likes. So before I get to that, AfriLabs is a network organization, Pan-African network organization of over 400 innovation and technology hubs across 53 African countries. The hubs speak different languages from English, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, and all the likes. And, this comes with different personality, different cultures, and the like. So let me just backtrack and start from when I joined the network. I remember then, I thought it was very different. Again, coming from consulting, I had this the natural, approach was to, push people, even the community members, make them work. I mean, why are we sending them 10 emails? Why are we, having to translate? If they send me a document in French, I'm going to translate it to English. Why do we have to, translate it and share it with them in a certain way and all of that? And I'm just really thankful that I got, the guidance that got me to where, I am, on just that community. And a community for us is putting yourself in another person's shoe and providing an enabling environment for people to really thrive, but most importantly, find a place that it can be comfortable, to either seek for help, share the experiences, and the likes. So again, in the past 3 years, 3 or 4 things come to mind when I think of those, denominators that make it easy, for people to navigate within the community. One thing that I've seen from the Afrilabs community is that, there is a common or shared vision. Okay, everybody knows where we're heading to. It is drummed to people's ears all the time. It is communicated all the time. At least the very high level, we all know that, we want to build a thriving innovation economy for the continent. And so one of the things that, is always communicated to community members is, community or the network members is, one, nothing is too little, two, you're very important. Whatever you bring to the table at the bigger picture, it is. And even we have this framework that shows the interconnectivity, and it's always projected to say the little you do here, it connects to this, and it does have an impact, on the economy of the continent. So having that shared vision, I see it has helped carry people along. I mean, we're different. Some of us are loud. People from Nigeria are loud. They're forceful. Some of us are very, in their own kind of quiet, but pushing more. Some of us don't even understand truly our role, but that shared vision I've seen has really been impactful in just bringing everyone together. The second that I think I'd like to touch on is creating value. And so when you asked the question to Robert, I was like, yeah, because I had it noted down. I see that once individuals see the value that the network brings, it goes a long way in bringing, and the value doesn't have to be monetary. Afrilabs, up until 3 years ago when I joined, we're basically running on goodwill, from the community. They have an event, the community, comes with goodwill, and everybody see the value of connection to other people, connection to other ecosystem, a platform that they can learn, a platform that they can exchange. So that value, bringing value, I've seen that it has worked really well in the community. The other thing is that deliberately creating an inclusive environment. So I did mention in Afrilabs, no jokes. You write an email or you write a communication, you have to translate it to as many languages as possible, right? And I remember then, and we listen to the community. So initially, we had a situation where the emails will start in English, and then the French will come up the same email mirroring. And then we had a conversation with the Francophone community, and they're like, why? When we open the mail, it starts with English. We want to open our mails and we want it to start in French. We're like, why not? Our mails communication to the community started, like the group mail started going out in, it to start in French, and then an English subversion will be attached, and the Francophone community, Anglophone community didn't complain, so that worked for us, right? But the most important thing is that it's very deliberate. It's very deliberate. Even in our activities, we have several activities. I remember when we started the Hubs Learning Week, which is a peer-to-peer, learning week that we carry out within the community. It started off, in fact, as in the design, it was just 1 week. Nobody cared for the language at first. It was just 1 week of learning. And when we started, we had to start deliberately creating some of the days focused on the Francophone community, just to continue to, deliberately bring them and have an inclusive environment, for them. We have in our meetings, in our conferences, some of you have been there, we have interpreters. We will not have a conference with just English or just French. We'll make sure that we have interpreters if we're in a Francophone community, interpreting to English. If we're having an Anglophone community, communicating, interpreting to Francophone at the minimum. That happens. Now, another thing that I've seen that has kind of pulled the network together is just making everyone feel important, right? We have local actors. I will not go to Nairobi or Kenya without to carry an activity without a hub member, being at least at the forefront of that. So we give them that ownership, we make them see the value. Some of them, are in these countries and they don't, they're not even as involved in the community as they should. But what we've seen that once we give them that call and say, I have an activity, I want you to host me. These are the rules, these are the things that I want you to do. You see them, be more involved in the community immediately. Like after that, they are there in the community, they are, part of the community and contributing more. Lastly, I'll talk about, the celebrating of diversity. Still, hinge on us being very deliberate in ensuring that every member or every member of the community feels, special and involved. We recently launched what we call the AfriLabs Pan-African Language Week, and what that basically means is that each week a language is nominated, celebrated to the entire network. Not just the languages themselves, but the history, the culture, the food, and the community members are really excited about this. They have like panel sessions where, each person is talking about, I think the last one that was had, we had French, we had Portuguese, we had Spanish, the Spanish speaking guys, and they all came together, and I had that event. So, and every other person will participate and listen and learn, something new about it. Yeah, so my experience, those are the things,
No, that's very useful insights. And maybe something I can also add from my perspective as GSG is I think it's often really important to have a secretariat or a key person that can gather some information on the different needs and skills that are available within the network, and that is able to have this big picture. And then that's very useful. I mean, we found it very useful to then be able to connect people or signpost people to resources or skills, and kind of engineer, like bring the right people together so that they can start collaboration and so on by collecting this information. People, we do a survey, like a member survey every week, where we not every week, oh my god, every year where we try to see what they get out of the network, and also what they're interested in, what kind of skills, what kind of things they can contribute, and having this information can be very useful in terms of guiding the network. We're getting towards the end of the hour. I don't know if we have time for a last question, or if we should start taking questions from people. I don't see any questions in the chat, which is a pity because we have such knowledgeable and interesting speakers today with us. So if you, maybe I'll ask a last question, and if anything comes up, please feel free to write it down in the chat. So one question that I think is really interesting and that we run into as well at the GSG is about funding. Because when it comes to accessing resources and funding, I mean, often people are really happy to collaborate, but when it comes to funding, there's often a mentality of scarcity rather than abundance, which can create tensions between the different individual organizations in a network or an ecosystem. So I don't know if anybody who of you wants to take that question, but I don't know if you have any experience dealing with that, and how do you encourage individuals to be more collaborative rather than competitive when it comes to co-creating solutions? Nanko or Priya, I don't know if you want to speak on that.
It's the tricky one, but let me try. Maybe I can share some experiences of what I've seen. I think it's the reality. I think it's the reality across all of us who are, funded by philanthropic funding of some sort, right, or government funding, and the pot is always limited. And I think specifically talking about sort of the tension that I think, which is sort of the network is also accessing those funds, right? If you're building a network, which is true, the reality is that there are these many funders and there are only a handful who probably fund ecosystem building. And so if you are, that's kind of your work, and you're part of a network, probably the network is also fundraising and from the same pot of, funders. And I think, unfortunately, that is the kind of nature. And I think, for example, I think maybe I can give a good example from Andy, which is that a philosophy that they have is that, they, for example, are not going to be implementers of projects, right? So they're not going to the funders. I think Andy's philosophies are not going to the funders to access funding to then do the work that their members are doing, rather than, providing that funding to the members, or sort of using the funding for the activities of the network, which is quite different from what the members themselves are doing. So I think that is a philosophy, I think, that is respected by members as well, right? So even though we might be still, say, for example, the Australian government is a big funder in Southeast Asia, and, most of the ESOs or, other impact organizations receive funding from there. Maybe Andy also could get that, right? But I think that philosophy of, trying to sort of separate and not really doing sort of implementation projects and using the funding for implementation projects, which is sort of almost directly in competition with your own members, I think is something that they stay away from. And I think a lot of members respect, them for that. So that's one way to avoid sort of conflict. And the opposite is also the opposite is also happening, I think, in the ecosystem, where the networks then are fundraising to also do the same type of projects as the members. And so I have been in situations and discussions, in some of the networks that I've been in, where people are wondering, oh, like, we're part of this network, but the network is also like, the network secretariat, let's call it, is also doing the same work and competing with us for the same funding. So that time it does become a little bit challenging, and probably the network then becomes more influential to actually access this funding. So I think these are all sort of, things that we have to figure out as an ecosystem, as ecosystem players, of what really. So if you are in the audience and if you are building your own networks, these are considerations, I think, to really seriously think about, because I do know, for example, people who have left some networks because of that, right? And or you're in the network and you're wondering, why am I here? When and this is because one of the big pieces that where people might be joining networks is also to access these opportunities. And then you're kind of wondering, oh, am I competing with the people of, who are running this network for the same opportunities? And it becomes tricky. And I think that is something for those of us building networks to be aware of. And, kind of, I think, have open conversations with our members. I think that's one way. The other is about funding itself. I think no matter what type of intermediary you are, or, entrepreneur support organization, or even if you're a network, funding is always tricky. And I think for us, especially in Southeast Asia, and I think maybe in the African continent might be different, it is quite tough, because ecosystem building work is so essential because the region is still very young. Entrepreneurial ecosystems are very young. Most incubators are only 5 or 6 years old at the most. So it's a very young ecosystem. Most VC firms are only 4 or 5 years old. So it's a very young and growing ecosystem. And there's a lot of like that sort of basic, building blocks that still need to be built. And I think it has not always been easy to convince donors or funders to invest into this, probably because they have already funded this work in other parts of the world, right? They've already done this in East Africa or India, and now they're looking to fund something else, not the ecosystem building work. But we still need to build the ecosystem, and who is going to actually pay for that? And I think the local philanthropy has not yet reached that stage or maturity of seeing these kind of pieces. So I think these are some of the complexities that I'm seeing in this sort of work of ecosystem building, and especially network building. I think I'll just share a last example is that where I've seen it really work well, and I think Meva, you're so right, in the sort of motivation and like what will make us collaborate. I mean, we all want to collaborate. I think if you look or ask around this room, all of us want to collaborate, but we have limited time, limited money for everything that we all want to achieve, to drive our missions. And sometimes that's why I think in the impact ecosystem, we end up working a lot in our silos because, we have our budget and, our mission, and there's like not enough time and resource to pursue that. And to create and co-create becomes quite difficult. And so in those cases, definitely I think funding has made a difference. And we've had some examples in Southeast Asia recently where funding has brought people to convert the intentions into actions, in like being able to run projects together. And so I think there's really an aligned incentive that sometimes we can't do on our own, because we just don't have the money for creating, like adding 3 extra team members to co-create this. And I think in that way funding can be such a catalyst to convert our really good intentions into long-term action. So I think that's what I've seen play out.
Yes, I mean, definitely we've run into similar issues, and I think what's worked for us is telling people that you can also fundraise together if you have a project to collaborate. In many cases, it's easier to share resources for the fundraising for work rather than everybody competing against each other. You can often raise greater amounts if you partner to work on bigger projects than if everybody's trying to do their own thing. So we've really tried to talk to our members and get them to see how they could partner in opportunities rather than thinking about just their individual interest where that's possible. There's always going to be some sort of element of competition when it comes to really the core funding, as you were talking about. But I think on many aspects there is opportunities for collaboration on that. So I think we ran out of time for this panel, unless I'm allowed one last question, or should we move on to the
maybe if we can have a really quick answer, I'll let you go ahead with one more, Meva.
Well, I mean, I think maybe what would be great is just to have one example, I think maybe from Nanko, on, we were talking about this collaboration, but an example of collaboration very quickly on how members have come together successfully to collaborate on a project and deliver, because that's not something we've mentioned yet, and I kind of feel like that's what we should end on.
Yeah, so an example, so for us, we encourage, like you said, encourage them. When you work together, you go farther, you make more impact, right? And so we do a lot of encouragement, we create a platform for them to meet and collaborate. So for a good example would be on one of our projects called the AFILAS Capacity Building Program, which is basically a capacity building program, as the name implies, targeted at hubs on the continent. And so one of the activities is really, it really just provides grants to hubs to implement, capacity building initiative programs for their community. So one of the things that we say, one of the grants is like 15K euros for a period of 3 to 6 months. So one of the things we say to them is, oh, so this application is open, but if you collaborate, you get the chance, like you stand a better chance to, get the award. And we've seen that work really well. We've seen hubs from Egypt, collaborate with hubs from South Africa. We've seen Nigeria collaborate with, hubs from Kenya, and just coming together. And the good thing about that is that, you see the programs, like there's this transfer of knowledge and even capacity, right? Because a program that, the same program being implemented in Nigeria, contextualized in Nigeria, is also being mirrored in Kenya, for example. So yeah, for us, that's the example that I would give, where we encourage them to, really work together, apply for grants together, and yes, just reinforce the importance of moving together.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you to all of you for your really insightful contributions to this discussion. I think this has been really helpful, I hope, to everyone. I'm gonna hand it back to Ariel.
Great. Thank you so much, Veva, Robert, Priya, Nanko. Really, really appreciate all of your insights and contributions, and yeah, such good gems of very practical advice. So Robert, we're going to take your advice into consideration shortly, so we can break out into some smaller groups so that people can actually connect. But before we do that, I want to ask everyone to turn their videos on. And Shami, if we can just kind of unpin, if we can remove the spotlights for everyone so we can see everyone. So I see a few familiar faces in the audience, and I think so some people might have experienced this with us before at Pollinate. But what we're going to do is what I like to call a surprise photo, where if we were all standing, we would like turn around, but we're going to cover our faces, and then we're going to count down from 3, and you're going to open your hands, and you're going to make like a super surprise face. Okay? So are we good? So you're going to cover your face, but when I count, I'll count 3, 2, 1, surprise. And then everyone has a surprise face, and we'll take a lovely screenshot. Okay? Good? Everybody good? Everybody understand? Okay. All right. So cover your eyes, and in 3, 2, 1, surprise! Awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. Then we just have to have a little bit of fun. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Okay, awesome. So as we kind of get towards wrapping up, I just wanted to share a brief video with all of you that really shares a little bit more about the journey of Pollinate Impact and where we have kind of come from on this journey. So I promise it's only going to take a couple of minutes as we kind of pull that up and share that with you. And then after the video, we'll just share some opportunities for you guys to engage, and we want to hear from you again what's important to you, and then we'll break out into smaller rooms if anybody wants to ask any more questions or just chat with the speakers in a more intimate small group for the introverts in the room. So Tessin, do we have the video up? Awesome, thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Tessin.
It is estimated that more than 7,500 incubators and over 3,000 accelerators operate globally. Social impact incubators play a vital role in supporting and nurturing social enterprises. However, incubators struggle to gain visibility or the credibility needed to access consistent funding, and the incubation industry has yet to achieve recognition as a fully established industry.
We often face the same challenges related to things like strategic growth, team management, financial sustainability, etc.
Impact incubators lack a space in which they can promote a shared understanding of best practices in their work.
Two of the challenges that I think are really important for incubators to try to overcome are staffing and related to funding.
To understand the incubation industry better and to arrive at the best possible solution, we interviewed more than 50 social impact leaders from around the world, including entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, funders, investors, and researchers, and here's what they had to say.
By creating a network where knowledge sharing is open, where there's an openness to understand from each other's mistakes and successes.
And there's something so supportive about having this kind of community that can enable you to troubleshoot these issues, and that really helps you to focus more on this impact piece alongside the incubation that we're doing.
By bringing together the stakeholders in this network, we hope to create a larger picture of the whole and the part that each of them is playing in this.
And this is why impact leaders from across the globe came together to design a global network of impact incubators to build Pollinate Impact.
Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators,
where we aim to create a thriving, resilient, and mutually supportive ecosystem for impact incubators across the global south.
We believe that by empowering, resourcing, and enabling these impact enablers,
we can collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing the people and the planet.
Pollinate Impact is an avenue for impact incubators to connect, collaborate, and co-create a bigger impact.
In essence, we celebrate the pollination of impact.
This network has been co-designed by a group of social impact leaders, representing incubators, entrepreneurs, academia, foundations, and networks. One word that comes to mind when you think of Pollinate Impact:
synergy, amplification,
community,
collaboration,
openness.
Join us on this inspiring journey. Together, we will solve the challenges facing people and the planet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tessie. And so just to follow that up, we would love to invite all of you to become pollinators and join us on this journey. Shami has just pushed out a quick poll. So, we really want to know what topics you're interested in. We have a number of activities that we're getting ready to launch in the next couple of weeks. So, just if you can answer the poll questions and let us know which of these opportunities really resonate with you, which you would find really helpful. That'll be great for us, for our feedback, and we'll be happy to follow up with you post this as we get memberships launched and really get some of our collective action teams moving and basically get our programming underway. In addition to this, as we kind of run this poll, just a reminder, we'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn. You can always stay tuned with us via the website, where we'll be launching our calendar of events probably in the next week or so, which will have a number of things that are happening, post potluck. And share what you learned, share insights that you had, and use the hashtag Pollinate Potluck. And tell a friend. We hope to see many of you and some of your friends or colleagues join us in future sessions. We have some awesome sessions that are coming up tomorrow and for the rest of the week. So yeah, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll definitely see all of that and all of the links. And awesome. I'm seeing some really great responses on the poll. So thank you so much. This is really, really helpful for us to make sure that we're on the right track. And just making sure that we are creating programming and designing activities that are, resonate with you all. So as I think Nanko said, we really want to listen to our members and follow their lead. So I'll give maybe another 2 seconds, but I think it looks like everybody's responded to the poll. So thanks for that. And Shami, I will let you then enable the breakout room. So we will have, let's see, I think Robert and Meva together in a room, and then we'll have Priya and Nanko together, if I got that right. And then Shami, Tassin, myself will stay here in the main room if anybody has questions about Pollinate or the network or want to learn more. But again, this is an avenue for the introverts in the room to have an opportunity to chat a little bit more with some of our speakers and pick their minds if you have any questions. So we'll open up those breakout rooms and we'll leave a few minutes for some direct question and answer with our awesome speakers before we wrap up.
Yep, it's a self-select, so I'm just opening up all the rooms.
Yeah, so you can pick wherever you want to go once that's up.
So Robert and Meva, if you could please join the breakout room with your name, and then Priya and Nanko, the one with your name, please. Robert, I could assign you to the room also.
I mean, I've not seen a prompt. Is there?
Don't the host see the prompt? I can assign you. Do you want to go to a particular room?
No. Okay. No. I
Okay.
I couldn't tell if people were going to breakout rooms or they were just logging off, which is also
Yes,
okay.
so we have, actually there's nobody in Meva and Robert's room.
Well, I see Nanko's still here, if you want to move her out. And hi, Zawadi. Hi, Claire. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Ariel.
How
Let me
are
quickly
you?
jump into a breakout room. I'm good, and you?
No worries, no worries. I look forward to our coffee. When is it?
All right, great.
Awesome.
How am I supposed to move to my room?
I can.
Shami, do you want to just reassign Nanko?
Sure, I will assign you to your room.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so.
Okay, so small. I mean, people stayed. I mean, a couple of people. So, I mean, maybe we can give them. Do you want us to give them 15 minutes or?
Well, we have to wind up in 10 minutes. Right? So I'll give them maybe exactly 10 minutes. And then we have 3 minutes to wind up.
Or can we send can you send I guess you could message all participants.
Broadcast?
Oh, broadcast. Yes. Thank
I can
you.
do a broadcast message.
And then, yeah, maybe I'll join Maeva and Robert's room since they have fewer people. And then we'll come back. Is that okay?
Yep.
Since nobody's here. Nobody stayed here.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want me to assign you?
Nope, I'm going.
Anything wrong with your Mentimeter? I mean, or rather not Mentimeter, your screen share.
No, so before everybody joined, I did a test with just the speakers and it worked.
Okay.
And then I did the canvas slide. And then when I moved to Mentimeter, it showed me that your screen share is paused, but when I click the play button, it's not, so it's sharing the screen, but something is blocking it. So I don't know what happened.
You completely stopped sharing your previous screen, right? Your
Right. Yeah.
canvas.
I stopped sharing and then I reshared with, and then it just kept giving me that message. So I don't know what.
Okay,
So
so
all the
maybe for
amount, like
tomorrow's.
I tested it out by myself. I tested it out this morning with the two of us, and I tested it out after everybody joined, but still,
Okay,
I don't know what happens.
maybe
So
tomorrow someone we distribute it, like Mentimeter, you keep it, but the rest of it, maybe someone else, either me, Ariel, we'll take care of it, right? If
I think
to ensure
different
this
people,
doesn't.
yeah, different people sharing different screens might work.
Yeah. I tried logging into Mentimeter, like the website, like through your credentials, but it wouldn't allow me. It was just showing me the poll. So that didn't work either.
So you have to log in to my Gmail first and then open Mentimeter.
Okay, okay.
Because I kind of signed up through my Google.
Right.
But if we need to, what you could do is if you want to do Mentimeter, then you can create the.
No, you can continue because you already got the login and everything, right? So
Yeah. So
but the other screens.
You can do the canvas screen. Yeah.
Yeah, we can. I'll do the canvas screen.
But I still have to figure out what. I mean, it just stops working.
People started dropping in, like I believe almost 30 people joined. Like a total, total of 30 people must have joined.
Yeah, I saw it was at 28 or something when I looked at it at one point. I think Stephanie, Paul, they all kind of
They joined
for a little
yes.
bit and dropped off.
There was Wilfred too. I don't see him now, but he was for the photograph.
Correct. Wilfred was there. Yeah, but it's still, I mean, for the 60 registrations, I think it was a good number because it's still like 40%, right? Given that we ourselves are about 10 people, 7 of us, plus the 3 or 4 stewardship groups. So, so we really had 20 outsiders join, which is 1/3. Which is 30%, which is kind of 33% expected. Even after yesterday's email, there was not like a big jump, right? Yesterday we were at like 48, 49, and today we got to 60.
62. Right now it's 62.
62.
Yesterday's emails, almost 52 people clicked. Better than the one we sent before that. It was a bit of a fiasco, actually. Ideally, it should have been the speaker emails with speaker info. Because Ariel wanted it to be just the session info and focus on the content, but that didn't really work in our favor.
Yeah, because whatever we followed with Wednesday Wisdom session, even if we had 10 days to promote, we kind of gathered that participation or the registration at least. I think we have to continue to use Will Grow USA to post all our material or reshare or repost.
Yeah, I've been posting a few actually. Oh, I did a few initially. The registrations always come from emails. I mean, the majority of them. Even now, when I added these new, like, everyone who registered for this session, all of them were on MailChimp already. MailChimp tells you, right, did it add any new contacts?
Added how many? Yeah, that's how I would gauge, how many returnees and how many people are coming.
Did you take any notes from today's session?
I did. I mean, I took some, what do you call? People saying some stuff that they wanted, right? Some quotes, but we have a recording, so I can't. I don't have exact notes. I kind of highlighted which ones we might want to capture in the speaker quotes.
No, I'm thinking of going back to the recording and then taking. That's what I also did with the WWS sessions.
Right.
I always went back because when we are actually in the session, there's so many things to take care of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today's being a 90-minute session, it went by so quickly. So a 60-minute session is just going to
fly,
literally fly. Because even so, the introduction and the check-ins took 15-16 minutes.
Responses were quite long. I felt that like
the responses were very long. Everybody took too long. Even
anyone slept, any other speakers, session speakers that you've got a brief, you could request.
Yeah. Close in 1 minute. Or should I close now so it gives them 1 minute?
Still have 4 minutes for the session to end, right?
Right.
Yeah. No,
if I close now, they come back in 1 minute. And then we have 2 minutes to thank and wind up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me. Will be returned in 60 seconds. Okay. So do we have a LinkedIn?
Yeah, I have it ready in the chat.
Okay. Robert's back. You're on mute. You're on mute.
The 60 minutes time, I thought I'm choosing to ignore it. Apparently, I hit exit now.
You hit exit now.
And by the time I go back, it will be dissolved. So I'll hang out with you.
We are good company.
Yes, absolutely. So this way I get to have 2 small groups instead of one.
Awesome. Well, we're pretty much at time. I'm glad we got some chance for some small group conversation. I'm glad Robert got a chance to come out of his shell and laugh and share some experiences. But again, huge thanks to our speakers, Robert, Priya, Nanko, to Meva for helping facilitate. And for all of you for joining, for contributing to the conversation, and for sharing your inputs with us via the poll. And we definitely hope to see you all at many hopefully many more, not just potluck events, but post-potluck. I think in our group, I think Zawadi and Robert were already kind of conspiring around some collaboration opportunities, which is exactly what we love to hear, because I think what we've realized is our challenges are common and very much universal in this space. And so far as Pollinate can really help co-create and address some of these challenges and help provide that space, we are happy to do so. So thank you all. Thank you, Priya. I know it's super late, so we'll let you get to bed. And thanks to everyone else. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you're joining from. But thank you, and lovely to see everyone.